wait.
What? Oh, you gotta play the.
Well, I'm live. I don't see what I can share after it starts.
You just have to
Find it. Well,
copy the live stream and put it in.
Copy. There's my Twitter. Are you going live?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me start it.
So did you share it?
I'm about to.
My thoughts are, because it's not written into law, it's just a very dominant culture. I think the only way you can do it is a couple ways. One, I'm thinking about an executive order from day one. It says, in more legalese than this is not a thing. We will no longer honor this, because the way that all prerogative works is there's got to be compliance with the executive branch, because otherwise it doesn't work. So you got to eliminate that compliance and you make a mandate. And then you do training, particularly in the city, I'll call them licensing departments, whether it's zoning, buildings, housing will be impacted by it, planning certainly. And you pick the people to run those agencies and the deputies that are pledging allegiance to the new world order and good governance. And then I think you have the inspector general do some spot audits to make sure that there is real compliance.
All right, hey guys, it's that time for the Ides. Yeah, we've been doing these videos. We talk about the Ides, and we're making the Ides great again. And we're doing a kind of an update to an old scope that we did on apocalypse, and revisiting it, especially in light of new events and how it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And Lou is going to tell you about.
Well, so we just listened to the mayor of Lightfoot from Chicago, and we're going to get back to her in a little bit. Vaughn's got some nice synchronicities with what she was saying in that video. So tonight we're going to discuss this comedy that we're seeing right now. So although it's some heavy subjects, sometimes we can have fun still and laugh at some of the just the idiocy that's happening, and at the some of the terrible stage names that they're throwing at us. And so we're going to go over a few of those, and they have a common theme, so we're going to look at that too. And then probably in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to talk to a man named Felipe Willems, who has a lot of insight and knowledge about meanings of words and the Bible and things like that, and especially with apocalypse and its original Greek meaning, and that the fact that apocalypse and Ides and words like these, they've been kind of ruined over the centuries by different people, and these are actually good things. They're not bad, and it's partly why some people like James True and Owen Benjamin say this is the best apocalypse ever, and it's true because there's just so much unveiling happening. So Yvonne's going to take us back, and we're going to look at or listen to Mayor Lightfoot from Chicago again.
That was the video we were playing at the beginning. And this video, I don't know when it was made, but it was several years ago.
I don't know how long she's been mayor.
Yeah, I don't either. It's only a minute, but just listen for a few keywords.
And then there's synchronicities with what she said and what other people have said in the past. So here is Mayor Lightfoot. Well, where'd it go?
Yeah, I sent it in the other message.
There it is. Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago.
I think it was longer than that.
Here we go.
My thoughts are, because it's not written into law, it's just a very dominant culture. I think the only way you can do it is a couple ways. One, I'm thinking about an executive order on day one that says, in more legalese in this. This is not a thing. We will not no longer honor this because the way that all granted prerogative works is there's got to be compliance with the executive branch because otherwise it doesn't work. So you got to eliminate that compliance and you make it a mandate, and then you do training, particularly in the city. I'll call them licensing departments, whether it's zoning, buildings, housing will be impacted by it, planning certainly, and you pick the people to run those agencies and the deputies that are pledging allegiance to the new world order and good governance. And then I think you have the inspector general do some spot audits to make sure that there is real compliance.
Compliance over and over again.
Spot audits by the IG.
Yeah.
So if you've watched our scopes regularly, you know that I've talked about more than once my favorite WikiLeaks email from the John Podesta leaks, which was from Bill Ivey, who was Bill Clinton's National Endowment for the Arts director, and he's writing to John Podesta. And to me, it's the most interesting. I mean,
And
besides
this was 2010.
it's somewhere around there. But anyway, he talks about, and as I've mentioned, we've all been quite content to demean government, drop civics, and in general conspire to produce an unaware and compliant citizenry. The unawareness remains strong, but compliance is obviously fading rapidly. This problem demands some serious thinking and not just poll-driven, demographically inspired messaging. He goes on to say, I fear we are all now trying to navigate a set of forces that cannot be simply explained or fully understood. We think that it can't be fully understood because God is in control.
Right.
But that when he says that they have been quite content to demean government, drop civics. So the whole dropping civics and not teaching our children about their heritage and history, that's intentional. That they were quite content to demean government, drop civics, and in general conspire to produce an unaware and compliant citizenry. She talks about you have, in order for what they're doing to work, I would say the New World Order to work, you have to have a compliant citizenry and she mentions towards the executive. And so she was speaking there of, I think, Chicago local.
And in the email to John Podesta, they're talking about the unawareness remains strong, but compliance is obviously fading rapidly. Well, the compliance is really fading, and I believe that's why a lot of things keep getting amped up, and
right.
The stories keep just getting over the top. But the unawareness is not strong like it used to be.
Well, this was written probably 10 years ago, so the unawareness is definitely. What did he say, that the unawareness remains strong? I would say the unawareness now does not remain strong. And the compliant citizenry, as we saw during shutdown, that there were a lot of people that didn't comply, that weren't. I think that's why a lot of states opened up, because, people wanted to say, well, it's the Republican governors and they were just doing the right thing. Well, I happen to think it was because people weren't complying and it would make them look bad.
And I would be willing to bet that an email like this today between the same two people they would be much more alarmed and more panicky especially about the awareness and the unveiling that's happening. And that's why we're talking about apocalypse again tonight and what that word really means, because there are a lot of words that we need to take back.
Right.
Even gay, and we need to take back the rainbow, and we need to take back apocalypse. And we've talked about Ides many times before, especially with March of Ides.
Well, the way that the left and progressives and whoever who wanted to fundamentally transform us, they're very calculating with their words. Like, they don't just choose the rainbow because they liked the rainbow. It had a deep, that was God's, symbol of his covenant with man. They're very intentional about the words that they do use, and we need to be the same way. So they've hijacked them and twisted them, and we just need to reclaim them.
Yeah. So let's get into these wonderful stage names. You want to start calling up some?
Yeah.
So, and I know some of these names you guys have already heard of, and it's just, we're not going to get into super detail on each one because everybody's heard the stories and the so-called conspiracy about him. But
And once these things are pointed out, it's really hard not to see them, because I've started to go back and look at older stories about mass, news events, and then you start noticing the names. You can't stop noticing it now when you read the stories. And so the first one, like
Waynell Sexton,
Waynell Sexton. Have y'all heard of Waynell Sexton?
the second grade teacher.
And I'm not here to say that these people don't exist, that they're not real people. I don't know if it's just a natural synchronicity or part of the simulation, or some of them I do think are definitely made up. Some of them are not. But Waynell Sexton was George Floyd's second grade teacher, who just so happened to keep his school papers from 38 years ago, where he is talks about dreaming of becoming a Supreme Court judge of the United States. And so he wrote this he wrote this paper, and the paper's all clear. It looks like it was made today.
Made the day before she aired it on CNN.
But her name is Waynell
Sexton.
And then when you look up Waynell and you start looking at Waynell Sexton, you start pulling up other tragedies like this Sandy Hook and San Bernardino, maybe.
One of the California shootings.
Yeah, one of the California shootings. And you see her, we know that there are crisis actors. I'm not saying those things didn't happen, but there are crisis actors. And she sure seems like she's one of them, because if you look at her age and the age of George Floyd, like, it's not adding up. And I suspect that more of that might be revealed in the future.
So then we have a person who is a private in the National Guard in D.C. that helped push back the protesters from the White House. And now her brother apparently, and she had sympathy for the protesters, but her brother was apparently among the people in the protest who they say gassed or pepper sprayed. There's all the stupid crap around that. But her name is C. Kenya Lynch. And actually, I meant to, before we started with the names, I meant to ask you guys, do you remember back in elementary school and you had the little jokes about, do you know the book about Under the Bleachers by Seymour Butts? And there's another good one, The Yellow River by I.P. Freely. There's a lot of those, play on words and the way they're spelled, the authors' names are spelled. And so that's, I think, whether it could be the CIA or whoever, if you want to get into so-called conspiracy, which the CIA came up with in the first place.
Yeah, could they just be having fun?
Is somebody having fun? Because we should be having fun too, because some of this is almost comedy gold.
Right.
And so we've got C. Kenya Lynch, and she has sympathy with the protesters. And then this is a real good one here. They found somebody that was planning on burning down. He wanted to burn down a bunch of synagogues.
Right.
And his name is Israel Burns.
Israel Burns of Bath Beach, Brooklyn. He was interviewed on Fox News and threatened to burn down the Diamond District if the mayor and governor didn't come to speak to a crowd. Israel Burns. Okay, so
yeah, so the mayor doesn't come, and that's going to force me to burn down some churches and synagogues.
Israel Burns.
And then we've got, and this was played as a country, and I listen to country music, and I'm familiar with artists. I've never heard of this guy. And keep in mind, there's a little bit of a common thread in all of these names, these stage names too. But he was labeled a top country hit maker.
Right.
There he is. Is that Felipe?
It is.
Okay, cool.
Hey there.
So this man named Shane, now I know you pronounce it McAnally, but it could be McAnally, Shane McAnally. And plus with the story, he was afraid about coming out. And the coming out was that he was supporting Black Lives Matter, and he was worried about threats against him and stuff. So that's this next one. And I'm going to pronounce it the way it probably should be pronounced. Virginia Fuchs, Fuchs.
But I think that Shane McAnally, he also came out on coming out. was it coming out? How coming out made Shane McAnally a Nashville star? That he was also gay.
Okay, so is that a double entendre?
Yeah.
But we have Virginia Fuchs. This was a story from yesterday or the day before. An Olympic boxer,
Yeah.
female
Wrestler, boxer.
Olympic boxer. She got out of a doping scandal because they investigated and it turned out she had sex with her boyfriend and he was the one taking the steroids or whatever it
Right.
was she was accused of. So Virginia Fuchs avoids a doping charge.
FUCHS.
FUCHS.
It's just funny, you know.
And then we have a NASCAR driver who I'd never heard of. I used to kind of follow NASCAR.
Now my husband has heard of him. So.
Yeah, he has, and he likes them. But this man quit NASCAR because they're banning Confederate flags. So the story's got to be now that, well, you're a racist if you like Confederate flags. And his name is Ray Ciccarelli. Think about that one, Ray Ciccarelli. Now, is he the only Ray Ciccarelli? Is he the only NASCAR driver that did quit? And they just said, well, they said this last name is gold. We could use that.
Racist. It's just more entertainment.
And we want to staying and getting back to the Olympics again. And this is an older story. This guy's on the Olympic committee, and when this stuff started, Yvonne's going to do a picture of this man's book that he put out, I believe, in 2004. He's on the Olympic committee, and he had tweeted early on, and I think in February, that they were going to have to cancel the Olympics. And his name is Dick Pound. And now maybe his name is, because remember the old joke, is your name Richard? Because you're being a dick. And so he owns this name.
Okay, so his name's Dick Pound, and so this is the book that he wrote. So I want you to pay attention to the title of the book and also the imagery. Let's see if you can see. Can y'all see that? Do you see Do you see the same thing that we're seeing?
Now, I don't think that he's an Olympic athlete himself.
Dick Pound inside
the
Olympics, and look at that image. Okay, hold on. Why did it do that? Huh?
Is it fading?
Oh, maybe. The imagery. That's not accidental. I'm sorry.
Which is, we should have fun with this stuff too.
A behind the scenes look at the politics, the scandals, and the glory of the games. Dick Pound.
And so we're going to get in. And so we have one more name, and actually not really related to this. So we're looking at these terrible stage names. So these script writers, they're not sending the best with these names. But what is the focus or the obsession with anal?
Yeah.
What is up with that? And then I would invite you guys, and I wish we could play it, but look up Newlywed Game on YouTube. Newlywed Game have to be the butt, Bob, because there's a little 39 second clip in there where he asked a lady, one of the couples, he was asking the couples, what is the strangest place you've thought about having relations with your new husband? And the joke has always been that would have to be the butt, Bob, but she actually says ASS, and they bleeped it out and stuff. But while we were looking into that right before the broadcast tonight, we found Bob Eubanks, who was the host of the Newlywed Game.
Right.
He's got a debunking video up on YouTube saying that never happened, but it's right there.
It's like a 3-minute clip where he's saying it didn't happen. Technically, okay, it wasn't word for word, but we just pulled up the clip and watched it where she said, she said that ASS.
And then everybody laughs and it's all funny. And he was just trying to say, no, we're talking about location, venue, I think is what Bob Eubanks said.
But
venue.
why would he feel the need to debunk that?
Yeah.
Like, what's the?
But if he did, why didn't they take the other one down that contradicts what he said?
Right.
So that's, we just found that these kind of setting up
And
for
there's
apocalypse.
More,
And
there's more. Like
there's
if you
so
start,
many.
I was looking at one today by Haaretz. It's a Jewish paper, and it was something to do with COVID-19, and they mentioned some university press professor named something. So it was SORIOT.
So Riot.
So Riot. Pascal.
Like it was.
I don't know how you pronounce that, but
like
what I saw was So Riot.
His last name was a solution to what people thought there was a problem.
Right.
His last name is the solution. So
Riot.
Riot. So we want to get into Apocalypse and the revealing, the revelation, and what it means, and we want to get Felipe in here and have him call in. So if you will go ahead and hit that double smiley face icon, Felipe, we can get started with that section. I was also, while he's coming in, I was just going to mention Elon Musk with all this, because his is another name that's kind of his. I can't remember. Owen talks about all the time. His name is a character in a book.
Oh,
Elon.
Yeah, Elon. Well, if you look at how Elon first began, the beginning in media, he was really hyped up by the likes of Vanity Fair and.
So yeah, Elon Musk tweeted out last week, break up Amazon. So then all of a sudden MAGA people are like, oh, he's on our side now. So we're like, okay.
Which
really?
he may or may not be. I don't know. But his dad was a member of the technocracy in Canada when it was illegal to be a part of the technocracy. And I don't know. He's got an interesting timeline. It's an interesting story to watch. But
don't just because of one tweet, don't just go, all right, we're winning.
Or a few tweets.
But we've got Felipe now, so welcome and thank you for being here, Felipe.
Is it paused? Can you hear us? Hold on. Okay, now I can. I had to turn off.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
I do.
Because I can't. You guys are paused on mine.
Huh.
Oh man, I wonder if we've been paused. Have y'all been able to hear us,
I don't know
or
what to do here.
can you hear us now?
Huh.
Hold on. We might have to start over.
You may have to start over.
Can you hear us, Felipe?
Can't hear us.
Nope.
I can hear you off my iPhone, but not my iPad.
Huh. She said
so
we haven't been paused.
So you've heard us?
Kinda
You've heard it
messed up.
all?
We have somebody watching who said they've heard us. Now I'm hearing him in a delay. Hey, what if we knock you off and you come back in?
Yeah.
We'll try that.
That's weird.
Because he heard us say, come on.
Let me ask, but really.
So if you can hear us, Felipe, now, try to come back in. Yeah, try to come back in, Felipe.
Okay. I don't know if I need to leave this up.
All right.
Billy says he can hear us, so that's good.
2, 1. Okay.
Okay. Are we live?
You hear
Yeah.
me?
Yep.
All right.
Wow.
All right, good.
That was weird.
Yeah. Everybody else said they could hear, so I'm glad we don't have to start it all over.
Well, cool. So, Felipe, we're glad you came. We had I don't know if you saw it, but a few months ago we did a thing on Apocalypse, and we didn't do a whole lot of research, but we did look up, the original Greek for Apocalypse is like unveiling and awakening, revealing something that would not have been known without the apocalypse. And so we want to let you kind of take it away to start and kind of dive into it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad earlier when we were tweeting to each other or DMing, I said, gee, I'm going to look some of that up. And I had some fun because I realized when you try to look up apocalypse in Greek, it gets complicated because the apo is its own word.
Okay.
And if you don't know Greek, you don't know all these weird things like prepositions. Apos is a preposition.
Yeah.
And so the word is a compound word. And that first part would mean like out from. Excuse me. I don't know why my protein shake is somehow coming up my throat going, hello. Must be because I'm on the air.
Right.
Anyway, so that other part, kalupto, which is, it goes back in the language families to Indo-European. And that part would be hiding or burying. And so you think of that part, as you mentioned, to conceal or to cover. And I don't want to go too deep into all that, but just to let you know that we're going to look at that word from both its compound of a preposition and a noun, as well as you really want to get to the bottom line. What is this hidden thing,
Right.
that is coming from?
In pop culture in modern times, apocalypse means, the end, end times, or the movie Apocalypse Now, or, it's all negative. You think of
And
Revelations.
it's fire and brimstone and guns and everything falling apart. But that's not what apocalypse is.
Yeah, that is correct about the pop culture idea of, and also the fact that the last book of the Bible is called Revelation. That's one way everybody in pop culture sees it.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Felipe. I did see something when I was researching this, is that some people would actually posit that the book of Revelations could have been very well called the book of Apocalypse.
Okay, well, yeah, that's where my background comes in handy as far as being an exegete and using the languages. The name of that book, and I'm trying to find, because I've got, here it is. The Greek name of that book, instead of being called Revelation, which, by the way, in the Bible, in English, it's going to say Revelation, and it's singular.
Right.
And it does have that idea where people said, I thought it was Revelations in the plural.
Right.
By the way, I should also mention, this is something I keep forgetting to say about my name, because I'm used to being called all kinds of different, not even close to my name. But and it is a Greek background. Philippos is the Greek for my name.
Okay.
So, but my name in French, which is how I got named from my Belgian parents, is Philippe. So I tell people,
Philippe.
beep, beep, it's Philippe.
Okay.
So hopefully you'll
Philippe.
help me
All right.
remember beep, beep.
Got it.
It's called, in Greek, Apocalypsis Yanoi, or Yanu. And it means whatever you want to say that word, apocalypse, of John. And that's where the very first word is apocalypsis Jesu Christu. So the apocalypse, again, we haven't defined it, of Christ Jesus, or actually in this order, Jesu Christu, Jesus Christ. And it doesn't say Jesus Christos because it's possessive. So it's Jesu Christu. But that very first word, apocalypse, so let's call it Jesus Christ's apocalypse.
Right.
And so again, where you said that word, and we could talk about uncovering or the unconcealing, because that's one of the uses for the word, is to conceal.
Right.
Okay.
And so and that's why we get the English that's so apropos when we say revelation.
Right.
So I'll stop myself every so often here to see if thoughts come to you as I'm saying these things.
That's very, and I had the Revelations versus Revelation
Right.
thing, because it's Revelation.
Yeah.
Is it like an event instead of like a single thing? It's an event. It's a happening.
But actually, this book is not just an event, it's events. So you can see how people came up with the idea that, the book of Revelations. Of course, but it's really here's the funny part too. It says Apocalypsis Yanu, so the revelation of John's revelation, so to speak, because it was supposedly, and I believe as an exegete and theologian and I call myself infralapsarian Orthodox Christian. I can get real theological about it all. But as a believer, I think, yes, the Lord Jesus Christ revealed this to John, and it's a book. So it's one book, but it's a whole history. So he's talking about the plural, the revelations, all the things that happen in this book.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating.
Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And now, is apocalypse, the word, separate from the writing of the Bible? Like, did it have its own meaning before, or does that come together in the history of the language, the Greek?
Well, the way it happens that we're here talking about this book. So the way it happens is pretty straightforward in that it was an event, and it was kind of like a day, like what we're doing is an event. We're getting together and we're having a talk. Imagine, if you will, and as weird as it sounds, this guy who's an apostle is stuck on a Greek island by himself. He's been exiled, and the Lord actually comes to him. That's the background of this book. And so just to bring that together, the event is let me tell you what's going to happen.
All right.
And it's all future. So that's why this kind of literature is called apocalyptic literature. It doesn't just have to be in the Bible. It can be anything that's apocalyptic.
Okay.
So you can see what's going on with this, right?
Right.
That's neat. So,
Well, when we first did the first video scope that we did several months ago about apocalypse, and about faith, hope, and love, and there's a lot of devastating and chaotic things going on right now. But in the midst of it, there's all these revelations, these great revealings about things we would have never known. The WikiLeaks, the Podesta Leaks emails. We can see, unlike any other time in history, what these people, I don't know who they are, where they come from, who they is, what they have planned for us. Whereas, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it took a little bit longer for information to flow. And so we're being inundated with all this revelation, and it can be a bit overwhelming. But to me, it's amazing and interesting.
A glorious time, because we've talked about it before, as the technology is surpassing their ability to control the narrative and lie and
cover
do with
for
it.
the lies.
And to me, and this is just a theory of mine, is Satan overall, and there are different interests and different competing bad interests that probably follow Satan, and some of them may not even know. And it's not like just one big plan, and Satan's just working his magic by just using everybody that's willing to be used.
Right. The shutdowns and the riots, everything that's going on with that. Dr. Fauci and the WHO, 10 to 20 years ago, how much worse would this have been if we didn't know what a fraud Dr. Fauci is?
Or how much, in 1976, when there was the so-called the Spanish flu was making a comeback, it never did happen.
Right.
The people that were killed in 1976 were killed from the vaccine they created so quickly.
Yeah,
and
then
that thing fell apart.
Hundreds of them were paralyzed over a fast-tracked vaccine for a pandemic that never
happened.
But we wouldn't know that, and when I wouldn't be able to show people, here's President Gerald Ford on TV. It was a live
feed showing everybody
all
get the
3
vaccine.
channels. It's okay, get the vaccine. But I'm betting he didn't get the vaccine that ended up paralyzing hundreds of people before they stopped it. And that's the great thing about apocalypse, that best apocalypse ever. There's so many good things going on. These revelations they're a good thing.
Well, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And I'm talking about this whole idea of media.
Right.
And my friend who's been involved in different ways in the media, which is a plural thing.
Yeah.
He was originally a photographer, and because he was a forward-thinking kind of guy, back in the, let's say, mid-70s, he said, I'm going to study computers because all cameras are going to be digitized.
Right.
Wow.
And so, gosh, interruptions here. I'm going to turn that off. And so the thing, he's taught me a lot of interesting things. We have some interesting, our lives are on two different parallels. And I have things that I can explain to him, and he has so many things he can explain to me. And so back to this idea with the media. If you've watched on any of my scopes where I talk, I usually mention about the angelic conflict that's going on. That is really the heart
Thanks for the
of
super heart.
everything. Yeah, because what came first? The media and our countries and arguments and people fighting over Black Lives Matter, or an angelic rebellion that, it looks like Peter just popped on here too. There was an angelic rebellion, and the way we have to look at it is it's continuing through mankind. And so all these forces that we see and the ones we don't see, the ones that are hidden, which is the word, by the way, I was a crypto linguist. I've got three backgrounds. I was first a musician. Second, I was getting started in my pursuits of theology, but I went into the military because I realized that was something that was important, that our country is a country because of the military.
Right.
That's how we're protected. And then I got back into school and back into eventually theology. And now I kind of get to do a little bit of everything. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I was thinking about the word for hidden. I was a flying crypto linguist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So in the Navy, I would fly around in the Mediterranean and listen to communications, and they were in code. And they were countries that we were monitoring, as we do all countries and others. Any country that's got power monitors all the other countries, right? So that's where we are with this. It's not just what we're seeing and the havoc that we're having to deal with, which is in every generation.
Right.
And like you said, Lou, that's awesome is that now through communications, everything can be out there in an instant.
Right.
I'll stop myself right there.
Well, and I think that's a good thing. I think a lot of bad things have been stopped. I think Trump, well, thank goodness, Trump was elected and we didn't go for more war in Syria or anywhere else so far. This, age of information has been able to push back against the media in a way that's never in the history of the world been done. I know that's a double-edged sword because the people currently that are in control are not in they're trying to maintain their control. They've had control over us for quite some time, and they're losing control, just like that email that I read you where he said that people were basically still unaware, but the compliance was fading quickly, and that was 10 years ago. And that's coming from the group of people who think they're in control, who don't understand, the last line. We're all trying to navigate a set of forces that cannot be simply explained or fully understood.
And they just, the part on them is it can be simply explained and understood
Because it's a spiritual battle.
Because it's under control, but they think they're outside of it, but they're in it.
Or maybe
This always reminds me, I have a song, I call it the Control song. It's actually called Control. And I think what I'll do is I'll look at what part of it would make sense to read to you as far as the story, the lyric of it.
Yeah.
Because what's funny is that, I'll call it topic, but the subject, I guess is the right word. The subject of control is the actual basis all the way back to the beginning, to the first conflict. And what's that conflict? Well, according to the scriptures, it was the fact that there is this fallen angel who wasn't fallen until that moment. And he was hot. He was cool. He was everything. He was over everybody else at the throne room of God.
Right.
And that wasn't good enough for him. How many people can relate to that?
Yeah.
I want more. Next week, I'm going to get this. I'm going to do this.
Right.
And so, let's see, where, yeah, I think if you, yeah, okay, I'll just go this far, and if something else, and I'll read the bridge. The first verse and the chorus are like this. Waking up to a brand new day of possibility, feeling great from head to toe, your hands on a cup of coffee. Say a little prayer and thank the Lord for all the things he's doing. So far, so good, it all seems so right, yet you long for what you're missing. And then the chorus, control, you think you need it to solve every problem. Control, I know you want it to see the world or to set the world in the right direction. You think you know the way to go till you talk to me or anybody else, and then you see you're out of control. And at the bridge, it says, never, ever, never gonna have it all. Never, ever, never, ever gonna be holding the ball. You think you get it all, know it all, see it all, do it all, but you're not at the wheel. So now you want to spin everyone to see the way it all should go because you want to feel. And then it goes into the chorus again. And the end of the chorus is you're out of control. And so that's the point I'm making with that word is everybody who thinks they're going to control and going to win, and it's the Dems, and it's the Republicans, or it's China, whoever's going to win. They forget that there's this theological underpinning that says Jesus Christ controls history.
Right.
And whether people even believe this is a real thing or not is beyond their scope of whether they believe it's real or not. What if it's not real? Well, fine. But what if it's real and they say it's not real? Doesn't matter, does it? It's still going to happen.
Still real. Well, I think that's encompassed in that last where he says, I fear. We are all now trying to navigate a set of forces that cannot be simply explained or fully understood.
Well, and it's what I've done just internally myself in the last, especially the last year, is I'm questioning what I know and then starting to realize that we don't know. And we need to let a lot of us, a part of the apocalypse is realizing that you don't know things like you thought you did. And that knowing itself is that control thing. Oh, I already know this. I already know this thing over here. And that's that control thing you're talking about too, I think, is we've got to let go of that. And I think the apocalypse applies. A lot of Christians are saying, is this the end times? Is this? And I don't think so. I know a lot of people don't. People have always thought the end times were coming, because when we were doing the apocalypse video a few months ago, I looked up, I had a site, and it was all the different predictions of not apocalypse, but Armageddon and things like that into the world. And it goes back to, you can trace back to 2500 BC, and then almost every decade, all the way up to the present, people thought these are the end times. Everybody frame of reference is from the time they're living in, and instead of knowing a little bit of history. And I don't want to get too far off my thought, but apocalypse to me also is Christians believing, well, we know what's going to happen because we've read the book of Revelation. And actually, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think part of awakening and unveiling is in our own minds and hearts as Christians too. We have waking up to do also, because we don't know.
Yeah, the key is not what is going to happen, but I'm going to use the first word because it's not complete, so I've got to finish it. The first word is when it's going to happen. And so to finish that thought about the word when is it's a process. So when is not like when does the store close at 9 p.m. It's when does all this happen? And that's why a book like Revelation, not only is it a big, book, 22 chapters, but and by the way, what you said earlier about the history side of it and how long has this been going on and how do we see it? We see it from our frame of reference. The truth is, if we do only see it from our frame of reference, we're really in trouble.
Right.
And if we see it from a more objective frame, then that means we see those 22 chapters as part of a story that can be figured out as you read those chapters and relate them back to everywhere else in the Bible, which is this job. The term for that future business is eschatology, because this Greek word eschatos means the end, or seeing it like a big picture, the long
Right.
term. So the eschatology, the study of future things, you don't just look at this book and say, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
You also look at everything that's happened. And when they said, so they answered, not even 2500 BC, think just the scriptures, the New Testament, that's only part of it, the New Testament. From 2,000 years ago, when this book was written by the Apostle John, they thought right away, oh, it's going to happen during our lifetime.
Right.
And the truth was, it is happening during our lifetime, but it continues from that 2,000 years ago through to now. And that's where something Luke said, I'm thinking, yeah, this could be the end times that goes on for another 1,000 years.
Right.
And
Right.
we've been in it for 2,000 already. So
Right.
here we go. We got 3,000 years of eschatology.
Right.
Except
Well,
I
and-
don't know.
Because we're stuck in linear time,
Right.
and God and Revelation, all that is outside of time. So we can't really comprehend it either.
And it's hard to have this kind of conversation with, devout Christians, because they all have this set belief in it. But
because they're waiting for a temple gets rebuilt, and then this happens,
and they're
then this-
focusing on who's
and then
the
they're-
Antichrist,
and then- who are the 10 kings, and they think it's Europe or the European Union, and then who is this, and Gog and Magog, and it starts getting convoluted.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little story on that. You brought it to mind just now, and I thought about it this morning, and I forgot till now. So I'm glad you brought it back to focus. When I was at Dallas Seminary in the mid-late 90s, I was there from 92 to 97. And near graduation, the second president of the school was the chancellor. He had already, gone into the retirement phase. But he has an office there, and he's a really interesting guy. His name is Dr. John Walford. And he has since, as they say, gone on to be with the Lord.
Right.
But I wanted to talk to him. And, the door's open. I'm a student. I'm a senior student. I'm graduating. And I had a question. And I said, could I ask Dr. Walford a question? Because he's this big expert on stuff that we're talking about, eschatology. Here's the part I know you'll like, because you just talked about the kings and the countries, and that's what brought it back. I said, Dr. Walford, my family's from Belgium, and I know your family, your background was Dutch. So we have that lineage that we're very close. It'd be like California and Oregon or something.
Yeah.
And more like LA and San Francisco. And I said, I have a question for you. You've written all these books, and you know all this stuff about this subject. He's an expert in what we're talking about. And I said, the whole European economic community, the Washington, D.C. of Europe, is where? You guys know?
Brussels.
Yes. My family's from Brussels. So I told him, I said, the whole thing is over there. Everything. It's Washington, D.C. I said, but the scriptures say that it's going to be in Rome. The revived Roman Empire with the 10, like you said, the crowns, the kings, the whatever, the countries. And I said, how is that in your head? How does that work out? And he said to me, well, it's about 85 and 90 years old. And he says to me, well, that could be real easy to fix. He says, what they would do is set up the buildings, the offices in Rome. And overnight, on the date that they specify, like we reopened the embassy in Jerusalem on a certain day, right?
All right.
He says they would computer-wise, just transfer everything over to Rome, and bingo, overnight, everything would be back in Rome. And I said, oh, so I guess that fixes the problem if it looks wrong, and everybody's going to say, see, the Bible's wrong. See, how could they do that? They're in Belgium. And he says, boom, overnight, everything gets transferred electronically, and bingo, Rome is now the center. And that would be biblical. So that's how weird things can change, that we would not have seen it coming.
Right. Wow.
Hidden, apocalypse.
Isn't the UN based in Brussels?
No, New UN's in New York.
Oh, is it in
New York.
Okay.
Actually, NATO
NATO is in Brussels.
Okay.
Yeah, NATO is the military side of it, and then the European Economic Community, which is the nations, which, by the way, once it wasn't 10 anymore, and it was 11, and then 12. Oh, see, that's not the Bible anymore. I go, you can't say that because it has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
That one country could, get together with another one, and all of a sudden, East and West Germany become Germany.
Right.
Yeah.
See,
Well,
it's too superficial to think that way.
Right. Well, I think that wraps up the meaning of apocalypse.
Yeah. I have one quick, and it's kind of like a segue a little bit, but I've been teasing with this thing about when Jesus was being tempted by the devil, and when he was fasting. I think it's 40 days, and the devil offered him the world. He offered him all these kingdoms. He took him up in the air, said, "I can give you all of this." And I was watching a Vox Day thing, and he pointed out that he said, Jesus never disputed the fact that the devil could offer what he was offering. He just refused it. So from that point on, or even before, hasn't the devil offered this deal to somebody else on earth, and they've taken the deal?
The answer there to that question is no. But to what you just said that I think is interesting is who took over rulership of this planet and when?
Yeah.
And is the ruler now? That's a question. What's the answer?
And is it Satan from when he fell?
Yes. Yeah, when Satan, not when he fell, when Adam sinned.
Okay.
When man fell.
Okay.
When man fell, who now runs the planet? It's since that moment, it's the serpent, whatever you want to call him, Satan, the fallen angel, whatever, is the ruler. He's the prince of the power of the air.
Right.
And he is going to stay ruler until, again, this is where that book of Revelation comes in and says, when the Lord comes back and then incarcerates him for 1,000 years, there are some fallen angels right now who are incarcerated. They're from the Genesis 6 business that infiltrated and mated with the daughters of men, meaning angelic creatures with human women,
Okay, which brings me to, did you happen to see that letter, the open letter to Trump from that Vatican priest?
I did.
And it's particularly what jumped out at me was when he talked about that there are children of the light and children of the dark, and the children of the light come from Eve, and the children of the dark come from the serpent. That made me think of what you were just saying.
Yeah, I don't agree exactly with all of that and the way he put it. It was interesting, but I did, read. It was like a 3-page letter, to the president, the PDF of it. That same friend of mine, Peter, made sure that I saw.
Right.
And I said, yeah, the deal as usual, and this is what I was trying to say about the period of time that it takes, and that let's say from 2,000 years ago, we have a book that was written called Revelation that says everything that we need to know so that we can understand as if we went to watch a movie of it and then saw everything that happened and is going to happen and how it relates to all the other older periods of the Bible. But the bottom line that we're going to see out of it is if it's true, and I'm calling that in Greek a first-class condition, which means it is true.
Right.
And there's a grammar for that says, you say, if, the sun comes up tomorrow morning, we will get up and do something. Well, that's positing that the sun will come up tomorrow.
Right.
And so we posit that it's true. So if everything that we see happening is going to be true, that Jesus Christ controls history. Because people argue with that and say, well, how come we let this happen? And why did that happen? I say there's a reason and you just don't know it, do you?
Right.
But there is a reason. And the end result is it still a true principle or not? Does he control history? If he does, everything that happens to us, including this crazy COVID-19
Right.
and whatever's next, all of this is allowed. But
Right.
if you think for 1 second, speaking of the word control, that the Lord doesn't control what does, like how many, 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. And you say, women and children, is that fair? So wait till we get the answer directly from God. That will be a scary moment when he's because he's going to kind of like in Job, he's going to let you know what the deal is. And you're going to say, oh, now I understand. I agree. It's right.
All right. I think that's a good note to end on. I think that I love the explanation of apocalypse, because I mean, I would have had none of that. And then when you try to Google like the etymology of it, you really don't, the search engines aren't like they were 10 years ago. You can't really make any headway with that. So I really appreciate you coming on and explaining it. But apocalypse.
Yeah, by the way, I know I only started to explain it, but I'm looking at the books that have those answers.
Yeah.
And it's like a paper. It's like reading a book. It's not as simple as, oh, yes, the word apocalypse means
Right.
this. Boom.
Right.
All right.
So, but we hit enough about it to say, so it has to do with things that are going to happen and
Right.
they're really going to happen. And the answer is yes, and they're all there, but it's difficult to read it
Right.
and learn it. But we
Right.
can do it over time. So
Yeah.
if we're patient, we get to learn every year, every time we read something. And it's
Definitely.
interesting.
And if nothing else, to point out that it's not man's concept of what we've been conditioned to think is apocalypse.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, that would be the book that if you read the whole Bible and you read that a bunch of times, just that part, you could say, I'm confident in God. And if he's going to do everything he says he's going to do, I have nothing to fear.
Right.
And I can have a great day today and tomorrow and the next day. And I know I'm going to get sick and die. That's all fine. Meanwhile, I'm going to have a great day, even though I'm stuck in the house. I will add one last thing on my end that's funny. The day before they shut down the country, I went out and got something that in my whole life has never happened.
Yeah.
One is I've never owned a Martin guitar, and two, I've never owned my own 12-string. And I went and I've been dating this guitar for about a month. And I went to the store and the guy had it all put away for me, So he opened the doors just for me. We did the transaction, and then we closed the doors. By the way, his dad was an admiral, so we had a little conversation.
Oh, cool.
Right.
And I said, yeah, it's World War III. And I went home, and the next day the whole country shut down. I said, oh, good, I have a new guitar. I'm going to sit around and play for months. So how about that for a blessing, funny, stupid deal.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, well, thank you so much for including me in on this and having fun, and continue to carry on. I will listen as you carry on here.
All right. Thanks
Thank you,
again.
Philippe.
All right, take care.
All right.
All right.
He said something interesting about dying, that we're all going to die. And,
Yeah.
a lot of this COVID-19 and a lot of the scientists and research, is all about being immortal,
Yeah.
keep protecting,
We were talking
why
about that today.
do we shut down? Well, we shut down because the government's supposedly going to protect us from this deadly pandemic, which we all know is a lie. But I think some
Yeah.
useful idiots bought into the fact that they were protecting us from ourselves. So much of the medical research and medical technology, it doesn't focus on making us whole, building up our immune systems. These vaccines, these.
Well, it's like, this guy's tied up with Epstein, and you were looking at stuff today, and there's all these people focused on genetics and finding out the magic gene that you can turn on and we live forever, or you can transfer your consciousness into another thing and then get a new body. And we're always looking at, prolonging our lives instead of living the life we have And then also, it seems that modern medicine and everything that's happening in our diet and everything is actually making our lives worse. And all the stuff that they're studying and to try to make life longer. And I was talking to Yvonne earlier today, and it was like you get that Faustian deal, and some people, I wish you ask the devil for a Corvette and you don't have any gas. Owen Benjamin uses that example all the time. But the new Faustian deal, or the latest, it's been going on for generations actually, is I want to live forever. And the devil goes, yeah, you'll live forever, but it's going to be like this.
Right.
You're going to be like in the Matrix, plugged into something, and you get stuff sucked in, and you're just a being inside of a little hive somewhere. So it's,
And people, who have been induced to this state of fear about this virus that I don't know if the virus is real or not. I don't know if they can induce mass hysteria and on everything, but it doesn't really matter. You see all these people walking around with these face masks on, recycling their own dirty air and breathing that in, to protect yourself from it. The whole thing just doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of people out there walking around afraid of dying. And I'm not afraid of dying. I don't want my children to have to. I hope it's naturally where, I grow old and die, and she doesn't have to deal with an early death or anything like that. But I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of the viruses they've got. And part of this apocalypse revealing on this virus thing, I think is bringing to light the whole idea of about viruses. I mean, I think they're lying about the flu virus. And then, YouTube and Facebook and others, banning posts about natural healing things that will build up your immunity.
Shutting down messages of alternative messages. And it's not, they let hateful stuff stay up on Twitter, and you can find pornography no problem.
Right.
You can see everybody's business
easily.
But if you just disagree, and not even disagree in a
there's people
way.
Losing their jobs right now over the BLM thing. If you say the wrong thing,
or if you don't say you support it,
and
even if you stay quiet, it's not good enough.
Right. And so part of this apocalypse revealing thing is it's showing us, it's revealing our true nature. And even though it seems chaotic and backwards and upside down, it's really not. It's showing you the nature of man, which is inherently evil. And in this spiritual battle that will only be won spiritually, apocalypse is a good thing. And it's also, I think, caused, especially with the shutdown of the churches and the churches acting more like the world instead of God's kingdom. You're seeing, I think, a whole lot of people are feeling churchless. But what is that going to make them do? It's going to make them start delving into the. I know that I've already started.
I have,
delving.
and I've heard of some people, just Bible groups actually got together because their church did close and said, well, you know what, we'll meet.
Right.
We'll read the Bible together. We'll pray and stuff. So, and that's probably, what needs to happen anyway.
Right.
And if it's all under, that happened in World War II, definitely World War II Europe. They had to go underground for sure.
So it happened in World War II. It happened during before the Revolution. There was George Whitefield, who was a preacher that they wouldn't even let him speak in the pulpit, and so he would go to where people work. And a lot of our founding fathers grew up hearing him. He would go to like the rail where the wherever work was being done by where there were groups of people, and they, when you read about him, you hear about his striking blue eyes and his voice that carried. But he would start speaking, and the crowd would just grow and grow and grow. And I kind of think we have that same thing going on with technology. There's a lot of people using their platform to speak truth that we could never get a hold of, that they, Facebook and YouTube are banning a lot of that, but we're finding those voices in the forest. I don't know what the war is, W-O-R.
You might have just misspelled.
Or maybe W-A-R. But so these are interesting times.
Yeah,
and I know the thing that's bad is there's a lot of people hurting and there's a lot of negative going on. And but, it's always darkest before the dawn.
Well, we're about to wrap up, and we do have a slight warning for you. We don't want to
Yeah, we don't
alarm.
want to be
We
alarmist.
don't want to alarm people. You need to pretend the Word of God is alive and powerful. Hebrews 4:12.
Yeah.
I looked that up. But you guys, first of all, because we're speaking from a position of authority, you need to pretend that we have lab coats on.
Right.
They're dirty. We've been doing some work and some research, and we had COVID, and it kind of disappeared from riots and protests and such. And we're fighting this new strain, and we had murder hornets too.
Yeah. Well, this is mutant coronavirus.
This we probably can't just call it COVID-20 because it's just much worse than 19. But I want to see if you can see this. This is the new COVID that's on the way, and we think that from reports that we've read,
Anonymous sources close to this story.
We've had a lot of sources close to the story that
confirm
this guy right here that's on top of the big coronavirus. That's what you call a butcher beetle. And we think that it's a strain of a mutant beetle that's coming out of Chaz.
It's a mutant coronavirus. It's coronavirus 2.0. It's come out of the new Capitol Hill autonomous zone.
This little molecules you saw. No, Dan, that's not what it is.
No,
it's not a gum tree. It's as simple as that.
We have anonymous sources that have confirmed this.
We have many sources close to
these stories have been peer reviewed. World Health Organization,
but this is a mutant
has confirmed it.
Next strains do COVID.
Yes, and so actually, what we're proposing is that the Chaz autonomous zone needs to quarantine, and we need about 15 days.
Instead of people wanting to get in there, they need to stay in.
Quarantine them
because
15 days to stop the spread.
This guy can fly and carry all of this COVID with it. And instead of mandibles, he actually has meat cleavers, and we took those off. We didn't want to alarm you too much, but this butcher beetle is the real deal, and murder hornets don't have anything on
these
butcher beetle.
This is scary stuff, and we don't want.
I'm able to handle this one because this one is dead.
Well, also, Lou
it's inert,
and have had access to Bill Gates' vaccines on the corona, so we're all good. So.
We would not have been able to warn you about this without first getting vetted by Bill Gates and getting the vaccine.
This is the real deal.
We're protected.
Dr. Fauci, we spoke with Dr. Fauci before we went live, and he approved everything. We're about as credible on this as Dr. Fauci, wouldn't you say?
Or Jerome Adams, or
Dr. Birx.
Dr. Birx.
Yeah. All that's missing is our white lab coats. So.
And they're dirty because of all the work we were putting into.
We've been in the trenches for you guys. So now that we've warned you about that,
so we've got a different topic. I learned today librarians plan to use COVID funding to teach communism and anti-Semitism. I would only thing I say to that is so what's their new plan? Because isn't that what they've been doing? Because they're already hotbeds of a bunch of crap.
Right.
But we're going to get into.
Preview.
We're going to just a quick preview of Ides of July.
Yeah, let me do that. But let me just remind you of what we talked about today. We told you about the funny stage names that seem to be in this simulation, and we're not insinuating that these people aren't real, but it's just interesting and coincidental.
It's kind of over the top. Wayno Sexton is a teacher. C. Kenya Lynch is a private in the National Guard. Israel Burns is a synagogue wannabe destroyer.
Right.
Shane McAnally is a top hit producer for country music he came out as gay once, but he also came out as for Black Lives Matter. Virginia Fuchs survived a doping scandal. She survived a doping scandal because of having sex with her boyfriend. Ray Ciccarelli is a racist NASCAR driver. Dick Pound is on the Olympic Committee, and he wrote a book called Inside the Olympics. We mentioned Elon Musk. We can
Yeah.
go through, but
Okay.
remember to look at Newlywed Game. Why that had to be the butt, Bob?
And we did this as a follow up on a previous scope about apocalypse, how it's not what you think of in your mind, and that there's a lot of good happening with the bad. And if you're a Christian, you understand that in the end, this war has already been won, and it's a spiritual battle. And all these things happen with apocalypse, and these revealing things we could have never known, because even though this technology is, the goal is to use this technology to control us, they're not the ultimate controller. And so
The ultimate controller is us and our decisions, and it's I say it usually in most streams that we do. I want to reiterate that elite are not elite. We are actually the elite, and
Right.
everybody out here, you have your own discernment, and you're smarter than you're being led, or people think you are.
yeah,
And these guys don't have a monopoly on truth. Nobody does,
right.
except for Jesus. And, trust yourself and embrace the moment and have fun and take care of your family and know your community. And don't worry about Chaz up in Seattle. and they threatened to do it in Nashville, be a good soldier for Christ.
And North Carolina, I watched.
They tried,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to take.
And even if it did, okay, so then that means that community wants that, but that's not where you're at.
Right.
And, unless you are in Seattle. If you don't want that, get out.
Yeah.
But,
Get out of the cities.
Yeah.
Sure. But anyway, so next month's, as we were researching for this, I started researching the Unabomber.
Yvonne stumbled upon a huge rabbit hole.
And, Cassandra Fairbanks last month, I think she was reading the Communist Manifesto in a Periscope. And
She was reading the Kaczynski's, was it called
Yes.
the Communist Manifesto? Okay.
Oh, not the Communist Manifesto. Ted Kaczynski's.
Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Yeah. No, because actually Ted
There you go.
Kaczynski's manifesto is actually has a little bit more truth, has a way more.
Yeah, and I've
truth.
never read it, and so I've always just taken what the media said.
I had
about
read it before, like a year ago, and I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, this makes a lot of sense." And but anyway, so I started reading about the Unabomber, and so I was going to talk about the Unabomber tonight, but there's so much on this story that you probably don't know, that we thought we'd save it for the
it.
next.
This topic needs its own Ides episode.
Yeah.
And this will bring up MK Ultra, and this would be from stuff that the CIA itself has admitted that it did. And Ted Kaczynski was a victim of MK Ultra.
Yeah, mind
among
control
other people.
experiments.
And this just goes along with, guys, if you really think the federal government is here to help you, just think about this, the MK Ultra
Yeah.
or the Tuskegee Airmen in Mississippi, what they've done to human beings over the decades. So, and now they care about you. They don't want you to
protect
get
you from a virus
hurt from
with this
COVID.
fast track vaccine. Yeah.
And you know what? No federal government can defend you from this.
No.
They can't.
But
So the Ides next month will be on the 15th.
yeah. And
4 months a year, it's on the 15th.
we're going to talk about the victims, because they're not random. They made it. They scared the nation with it, and then I haven't even delved into the timing of it all, because it happened in 1995, 1996,
Leading into an even year election,
right?
which a lot of these stories happen to
And
be.
he got 4 life terms. He's locked away in some. You can't get to him, which is.
You can talk to Charlie Manson, but you can't talk to Ted.
They never have to talk to Ted. So it's an interesting story, and I don't think it's been completely explored. And so we're going to have a lot of good stuff. And I'll leave you with this. One of the first victims of the Unabombers, his last name was Christ. Christ.
Yeah.
And that just goes along with probably nothing. That has nothing to do with.
Supermax. Yeah. That's
Yeah, Supermax.
in
And I
Colorado.
would, man, if I had the money and the authority to go, and has lied to us, and they've always lied to us. We don't have the full story on that. I don't know that we ever will, but we're going to delve into it and ask some questions and point out some things that you not know. because it's an interesting story. And that guy, no, he was mind controlled from the age of 16 to 19 at Harvard.
Yeah, he got into
Harvard
Harvard as a teenager. So we don't want to give away all of the Ides of July right now. So.
Right. So, you know, tune back in. So you said it would be the 15th next month?
Yeah. 4 months a year is on the 15th, and that's one of them. So, and I would remind you, when the media puts out a story, wait for the retraction. And also, let's get out of this left-right paradigm, blue-red. It's false. It's to keep us split up and into the black-white, the racism,
right.
crap.
And start looking at, like, when you see these breaking news stories, start looking at the names of the writers, the names in the stories.
Think of the names.
And then you'll start seeing your Waynell Sextons and your C. Kenya Lynch, and you'll start seeing, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, yeah, the media's on.
And have fun with it.
Yeah.
Because it is a song and dance. And who knows what Shakespeare really was, but all the world's a stage. We are merely but players. And there's stage right and stage left,
right,
which is opposite from when you're looking at it. And there's all kinds of, we just call shenanigans.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
And we will see you next month. Well, that's the first time I've ever stopped it without having a